Today's guest is Edward Williams. He's a senior power platform developer at Andworx. And Edward has served over 20 years in the Maryland Army National Guard. He's very patriotic, and thank you for your service, Edward, and thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you much for having me.
So for somebody who has not had a chance to meet you, get to know you, talk to you, share a bit about your background, where you're from, who you are, and what you do.
Yeah, so my name's Ed Williams. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. I moved to Maryland a little over 30 years ago now. I always think it's a little bit shorter than what it actually is. But Maryland has been a great state to me. I love everything about it. I have been in the Maryland Army National Guard now for over 20 years. I am a chief warrant officer in the National Guard. I am what's known as a 255 November, so a network operations technician, somebody who does hardcore networking, that kind of stuff. All the while as a warrant officer or as a soldier in the Maryland Army National Guard, I was a contractor for the U.S. Navy. I was a Department of Navy civilian at one point, and now I have changed back again to a contractor and working primarily for the Department of State.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's unusual because you come out of a DoD background and then you're doing contracting for the Department of State.
Yeah, it was very different. It was one of those things where like I know DoD like in and out. Like I've done foreign military sales. I have worked hardcore engineering projects for avionics. I worked at naval aviation, so everything I did was working alongside hardcore engineering and that realm of the world. I myself am not that. I am just get to watch it and see cool things happen. But yes, one of the things like when working with the IT within these realms is, get to empower those types of organizations. I love it. I worked worked alongside a lot of these folks doing high performance computing for a number of years. So it was very awesome to see what IT is able to do for these engineering scope type people out there where they can do everything in pencil paper, they can do everything in Excel, but if we just give them a little bit more tools, pushing things out there with HPCs and that kind of stuff, it's amazing what we can do.
That's pretty awesome. So let's rewind the clock a little bit. Let's put you back in high school. Did you know exactly what you were going to do?
No, so I was a welder. I was in high school. I wanted to be a welder. And then fate has it, I caught myself on fire. So my senior year of high school, literally working on an Amish buggy. So right down where I live here in St. Mary's County, we have a lot of Amish around us. They bring stuff over to the tech center of the high school and work on a lot of the products. But I was working on this buggy and I was just putting down some beads in this thing, and I was young, dumb idiot. And my pants were frayed. I was not following proper safety protocols. My left leg caught on fire. I jumped back about 8 feet, and that was the day I decided maybe welding isn't for Ed anymore. So from there, I looked at different opportunities, and my dad randomly one day brought a National Guard recruiter home. So I met the guy, took all the tests, and it just went from there. It was funny. So I took all the tests with the Army, took the ASVAB, took the D-Lab to become a translator. I went to go do all the stuff to become a translator. Initially, that was my initial thing I wanted to do with the Army. Then my recruiter's like, hey, you heard about this signal thing? I think you really should do this. I was like, oh, well, that's cool. Well, do those guys get to like work with the translators and that kind of stuff? And he said yes.
Because that's what a recruiter does.
Because that's what recruiters do. Remember, kids, listen to your recruiters. I always joke about that, and it's fun, but it's I would not be the person I am today if that recruiter did not put me into the Army Signal Corps. I got to learn things that nobody else would have ever taught me. I got to meet people with so many different backgrounds. I would have never had the opportunity to do so. So while I joke about it, I am very, very thankful for getting the opportunity to go into the U.S. Army Signal Corps.
Now, not a lot of people know what a warrant officer is. Explain how that happens.
So a warrant officer. So definition of a warrant officer. Warrant officer is a self-aware, adaptive, technical expert, combat leader, trainer, and advisor. Basically, our job is to work alongside our leaders, our commanders to provide them with expert guidance in a particular field. I myself am a signal soldier. There are three types of signal warrants out there. You can be a 255 Alpha, which is automation, so think like SharePoint or
Mm,
stuff like that. Or then there's 255 Novembers, think of like networking, and then there's 255 Sierras, which is changing here from what I understand, but think of like security or that kind of jazz. So I myself went networking. Again, it's kind of silly, like this guy's a power platform developer, but he does networking. Yeah, because I like to make life complicated. So I went to doing networking as warrant officer because there's a lot of opportunities to learn how the bigger operations actually work.
yeah.
As a 255 November, you get to really see the interworkings for a lot of big Doden operations that you don't typically get to see as a regular soldier. So I made that transition from an enlisted soldier to a warrant officer in 2017. And I just hit my 20 years mark about 6 months ago now. So, and now I am a warrant officer instructor. So I am at the Maryland Army National Guard Warrant Officer School. I am the instructor for the course. I get to teach all the young candidates on how to do leadership and all the various things about military history and everything that they love.
That's awesome. Now, as a National Guardsman, is that a full-time gig, or did it start as a full-time gig, or ever be a full-time gig, or are you
So,
constantly moving in and out of other places while you're doing this?
so it's a good question. So, as a National Guard soldier, you're doing the 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summertime. Uh, but all the time there's deployments. I've done 3 deployments now. I did, Iraq, and then my most recent one, I was in another part of the Middle East doing stuff. But it just depends on who you actually are as a National Guard soldier. You can, if you want to, be a full-time National Guard soldier. There are various things like doing EGR, tech positions, what have you. But the general, what's known as an M-day soldier, that's what I am, you do your 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summertime, or whenever they have it. And that's how you live your life. It can sometimes feel like it is a full-time job
Hmm.
with the amount of stuff you have to do, training and OERs and COERs, making sure all soldiers have the need to. If a soldier has a problem, working with them to make sure that they can overcome those certain things. But yeah, if you are somebody who is looking at getting in the military, or maybe you're looking at your son or daughter to get into the military, the Maryland Army National Guard or the National Guard in general is a phenomenal place to get to. It is there's a lot of talk about education and paying for benefits and that kind of stuff. Maryland Army National Guard paid for my entire college education. I didn't pay a dime. I actually got paid to go to school,
Hmm.
which is one of the best reasons to do it, especially to go to a state school within the state of Maryland. They pay automatically, half my tuition was taken off, and then all my GI Bill, and then the rest of my state tuitions waivers went to my benefits, and then I just got all the extra money coming back to me. So yeah, if you're somebody or you're looking son or daughter to get into the National Guard, go seek out a recruiter, go talk to somebody, because it is a phenomenal opportunity to serve your state and serve your country
Hmm.
while getting to get all these skills. Because one thing I loved as a soldier doing this entire time is all the while learning all my soldier skills and making myself better in that realm. I was also serving as a contractor for the US Navy or as a Department of Navy civilian and just being better in that. And one thing you will learn as a National Guard soldier is that you may be with a bunch of infantry soldiers, you may be with a bunch of signal soldiers, but everybody comes from these amazing diverse backgrounds.
Hmm.
What my favorite NCOs that I got to, and an NCO for anybody is a non-commissioned officer, so think of like your sergeants, that kind of stuff. Uh, my favorite NCOs were folks who did not do IT on the day job. One was a full-time fireman. He taught me so many things that yeah, I thank him to this day. Another one was a football coach at a high school. Another one was a guidance counselor. And other ones just do so many things that you just never get to get that experience or learn or meet those types of people outside of this environment. So I cannot say enough great things about the National Guard, because you get to just learn so much about the people around you, people that, like, if I just stuck within my community, A lot of great people, a lot of great stuff, but I would know Department of Navy. I would know how airplanes operate. And I'm lucky right now there's no planes flying because they posted an advisory earlier. Planes were going all day today. But I would know that in and out. I know all those people, but I wouldn't get the chance to know all of the other amazing types of people in my state.
Wow. So how was that navigating your primary career?
So it depends on who you ask at the time. I My wife and I, we've worked through it many years over it. My leadership in the National Guard, because it would be nothing for me to be in Hawaii for a couple weeks on travel with the Navy and then show up to drill or AT in board shorts and flip flops. And my first sergeant had just the best things to say about me. So it just depends on who you ask in that regard. Or my civilian deployment, when I was either a civilian or I was as a contractor saying, hey, I got to go do this thing, or I got to go deploy, or all those kind of fun things. It depends on what lens you looked at it through. I will say I've had phenomenal civilian supervisors working as either contractor or a civilian. They have been super awesome. I've personally never had the horror stories of some folks out there like losing their jobs and they go on drills or ATs or stuff like that or deployments. I fortunately never had to live those things. I've seen other people go through that stuff, and it is very heart wrenching. But I fortunately have never had to go through that type of thing. So it is interesting to live that bifurcated life, because if you truly want to be good as a soldier in the National Guard, you really have to, go to your primary education. You have to go to your military schooling. You have to, stay physically fit. You have to do all the things that you do as a normal soldier, all the while trying to, live this other life, raising a family, building a house and all the stuff like that, that doesn't, go along with it. And you're not getting paid for most of that stuff too. So I will say, I love being a National Guard soldier. I love, serving my community and all the things that it's given to me. But yeah, it can be challenging.
Mhm.
And one thing I'll say, if you are somebody who is doing it now and you're struggling with it, it's something we all struggle with at one point or another. There's been many times like, oh, why am I still doing this? Why am I still doing this? And then you get to go to that drill weekend or you get to go to the AT and you get those young soldiers, or you get to go work on that event that it just, it reinvigorates you for what you do. So I always say, hold off. There's another thing coming. Work with your leadership, talk to them about what you're going through, because it does get better as a soldier.
So Power Platform,
Power Platform.
how did you fall into the Power Platform?
So, and I talked about people this a lot. There's really two ways most people come to the Power Platform. You come in either the BI route or you come in via the apps route. I came in via the BI route. So for many years, the U.S. Navy, we were doing deep analytics on a lot of these things with aviation. So we would get these results, we'd put them into this really magical Excel document, or maybe somebody would write some Python push through some Panda libraries, and then we would do some analytics. It was great, but it wasn't all that much fun to share, and not a lot of people knew how to use it. Well, this great tool called Power BI comes out, and a great thing about Power BI was that you could also get an external server. So you could actually install your own Power BI server. And there are certain environments that back in the day, there were no clouds for them. So you had to go run everything as is where it was. So Power BI allowed us to get all of the great power of using DAX expressions or Power Query inside of that, but then we could host it within our own environments and then share it with a wide community of folks. So I was a IT admin at the time. I was actually, at that time, I was an ISSO system security guy for this organization. I was like, hey, I think this would solve a lot of these problems. So we got that installed, started doing all stuff with it, and it was amazing. And it just kept growing from there. I then shifted my job. I was working with model-based systems engineering in NavAir, and same thing again. We were doing analytics for licensing. We know how many licenses we were pushing out for this MBSE product that we had, and we were using Tableau at the time, or they were using Tableau at the time, and it just wasn't fitting the bill. Sharing it out with people wasn't all that easy, and it just wasn't great for what we're trying to do. So I said, well, Power BI is really easy to use for a lot of what we're trying to do here. Let's go ahead and throw that in. And at the time, the Navy had already gone in full into BI, and everybody had pro licenses. So it was super easy to share, nothing I had to worry about. So that was about 2017, 2016 timeframe. And it was a much easier way of doing business. From there, I actually went on my third deployment to the Middle East to go do stuff. And about that time frame, I was, doing a lot of stuff with the Power Platform, internally with the Army and other stuff, building a lot of Power Apps, model-driven apps, the whole kit and caboodle. And I decided, hey, you know what? I'm really liking what I'm doing here as a Power Platform developer. As a Navy civilian, great opportunity. I was on my way doing NLDP, which is Navigator Leadership Development Program, which is how you get your 15 and your SES and all that kind of stuff like that. But it just wasn't making me happy because I was in an engineering group doing IT stuff. So I was very quickly just becoming a TPOC and doing core work and stuff that just wasn't in the technical realm. It just wasn't making me all that happy. So I decided to throw my resume out there, and this great company called Andworx said, "Hey, we want to talk to you." So they literally did my interview while I was deployed in the Middle East. I had my green suit on and everything, and say, "Hi, I'm Ed," and they said, "We love you. Want you to come do this stuff." So I came back off deployment. I think 1 month and like 3 months or 3 weeks later, I starting over as a Power Platform developer with Andworx, working Department of State. It has been an amazing opportunity with that organization. It has allowed me to really push the boundaries of what I can do with the Power Platform and what I can do with development. It is one of the things I love about the Power Platform is that it's so extensible. It's really, if there's something you want to do with it, it's just a matter of you mapping it out and building it. One of my favorite things right now is with Power Pipelines. The Power Pipelines is a phenomenal ALM tool within the Power Platform to push stuff from dev test prod. In and of itself, great product, but you can do so much more with it. I'm actually in the process of building an entire project management application wrapped around pipelines. So you can do getting all your user stories, doing all your Scrum, doing everything inside of it, actually doing self-documentation of your solution. So whenever you push a solution over from dev test all the way to prod, it'll actually run through everything you built there, build your ERD diagrams, document all your flows, do all the kind of crazy stuff like that, all because everything within the Power Platform is just stored in a table. So it's just a matter of querying it properly, throwing it over to whatever thing you need to. A lot of times I'm using just some PCF controls or some other like Mermaid JS diagrams to kind of visualize a lot of these things. But it's just a matter of getting those things in the right spot and then visualizing it. I know a lot of people, they talk to me when I do this, like, well, why don't you just use like ADO, or just use like Jira or something like that. And the reason I like extending pipelines and like looking at what we can do internally is because I believe that if we are using these tools, or if we're telling our customers, hey, I believe a Power App would solve your problem. I believe Power Automate Flow would solve your problem. Well, by golly, that's something I need to be using every day too to do my daily business. Because if my customers are going to feel this pain, I should feel this pain first. Eat your own dog food, get out there, know what it's about, and make it better. Because experimentation on our own selves makes it better for our customers.
That was a nice marketing spiel to say, what, Power Apps is difficult?
Yeah.
I thought it was for community developers. I make this joke all the time because when it came out, we exposed it to our agency where I worked, and nobody could make anything.
Yep. Yeah, no, just like one of the things, like I'm a huge advocate for building model-driven apps. So there's two types of apps you can build within the Power Platform. You build a Canvas app, or you build a model-driven. Most folks, when they get into building, they typically build Canvas apps. And that's mostly centered around because of licensing. They don't have a premium license, so they can only build off of SharePoint or Excel. Don't ever build off Excel, but you can. So they build mostly off of SharePoint. So they know Canvas, and then they go see this big scary thing called model-driven apps. And they go, you don't want to build it because it's not very pretty. it's just like, I don't like the way it works. But if you have the opportunity and the licensing to go build model driven apps, I highly recommend it. Even if your goal is to build a Canvas app,
Mhm.
because you can get your data model laying flat, you can get everything taken care of in a model driven app, and then go do all the fancy stuff in the Canvas app.
Mhm.
Yeah, but to your point, like the difficulties of it, there are most of the times when I'm building most of these model driven apps, I have Visual Studio Code up right next to me, so I can write all my JavaScript because I do all of my showing, my hiding, my actual actions with my business process flows, everything with JavaScript. So yes, it does take a little bit more oomph to get there. But yeah, if you're somebody who is just starting out wanting to build a Power Platform, you can build a lot of these really simple applications, but it's really just a matter of your ability to get into the documentation or start learning how the APIs work within Dataverse as the limit. You can do so many wonderful things, so many powerful things within
Mhm.
the Power Platform that I didn't know personally was possible until we started experimenting on ourselves and using it as our daily driver for our own tools. We're like, I want to be able to do that. Okay, well, let's go figure out how to build it for ourselves,
Right.
because then I got a lot of times too, like we'll be building these things, we'll show to our stakeholders, like, this is like, let's show our story points, and they'll go, whoa, that's really cool. How'd you build that for yourselves? Like, oh, we did this thing here. And then that'll spawn itself into an actual customer product because they like the way it looked, they like the way it functioned. So we can just go, cool, and then throw it over and actually give it to another customer out there within our organizations. And it just allows us to be better and better and better by building.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I was a full stack C# developer building custom from scratch, right? And I am bought into the low code platform capabilities. It brings, even though it's still got some complexity to it, it's far less complex than what I had to
Oh
do
yeah.
when I built full model driven apps from scratch, right?
Yep.
And I like that they've been introducing things like components and other things that you can then, from an enterprise view, build for people who want to build their own stuff. But you can say, yes, but
Yep.
use my component. You wanted this fancy lookup. You don't need to build it. Just drop it on there because we built it for you already, right? And that's the great,
Yep.
awesome thing, that value add that IT can bring to the business, and still let the business then be the driver for the business process they're trying to improve.
So, exactly. And there's things like you can do so many things with like flows, for example. So we
Mhm.
have a an environment within our organization just for community developers. So not everybody needs ALM. It's just like, oh, you're like 4 or 5 people or who are building a power automate flow for yourself. You don't need to go through ALM. Just push it over there. Now, if you get more than 10 people using it, we're going to talk at you and see what we got going on.
Right.
But we can put things inside that environment to help them out. Like we have a couple flows inside of there. If there's an error with their flow, they may not necessarily understand how to do error handling, but all they have to do is add this flow as a child flow that anytime there's an error, it'll kick off this other one, send an error out to the owner of it, and it's just built-in error handling. So they may not necessarily know how to handle it, but we build a lot of these components for them so they can do it. There's a lot of things like that IT can do to help empower these folks to get there, or to train other folks who are classically developed developers. I did something earlier today where we have folks who are, they know how to build .NET framework applications like that. They are great at it, but they wanted to see like how to do some of these low code tools. So did a quick workshop today. We did a very fast data model using Visio. These are our tables. Here's a look. Here's a lookups, that kind of fancy stuff like that. And then went and built the tables very, very quickly. Unfortunately, we don't have Copilot yet, so I can't just say, "Hey, go do all this stuff for me." Eventually, it will get there. But we were able to build that very quickly, build our view, build our form, and then in I think it was 45 minutes ish or so, go from nothing. We had an Excel document that we were initially looking at that a customer talked about, to an ERD diagram we all spoke about, over to an application that they're able to now iterate off of, push through the ALM, and do great and wonderful things. So you can get a lot of great things doing. And again, even if your goal is maybe to go build another .NET framework app or go do something else, the Power Platform also is a great way to get MVPs out there.
Yep.
So if I know my real goal is to go build this phenomenal app over here using traditional development, but I got to get an MVP out within the next X months or whatever it is. You can have two development arms using a lot of the fusion development that's been out there to build a very similar data model in one inside of, excuse me, inside of Dataverse. You build your model driven app or Canvas app like that. Then your traditional .NET developers or whoever like that can just simply connect to your Dataverse environment and build their apps accordingly. So you can get your MVP out there all the while having your other team built like that. So there's a lot of great synergy that can be done with that.
That's pretty amazing. So you've had a varied and interesting career. As you've gone through that career, what's something you've run into that you wish might be different than it is today? That you would say that if we came to you, Ed, and we said, Ed, you have the power to make a change for the betterment of the people who come behind you, or maybe the change you're thinking of might be too big, right? And maybe you're just getting us to start thinking about how we might solve that problem, right? I'm not saying you have to be the solutioner today,
Yeah.
but what might that be for you?
So I guess it would be how people look at being in IT. So when, now I started as a welder, like, and looking at different things going on within the organizations out there in the world, like, I can't do that job. That's not for me. That's
Hmm.
for other people. Like, that's not what I do. But after, joining the army and seeing how this thing work, oh, maybe I can do that kind of stuff, but there's still a couple years out. I still put it on this too high of a pedestal. Like, it was not something I could actually achieve. It wasn't until I was with Mantech at the time, and we lost our contract, and they put me over to another organization and said, hey, if you want this job, you need to go pass your security plus. It's like, well, oh, by golly, better learn. I'm going to go figure out what that means, and I'm going to go pass that test. So we're going to do all the fancy stuff with that. But if I could just express to people that IT is something that you can achieve. It is not something for the others to go do. It is for there is a role within IT for everybody. One of the things that I think when it comes to development, especially, is not getting enough eyes and enough ideas from different backgrounds inside of it. We right now we work with folks who have either visually impaired or hearing impaired and different types of things that they have about them. And if we did not have those insights, we would not be able to build applications for customers that may have those things.
Mm.
So again, IT, software development, all these things are for everybody. It's not just for a certain category of folks out there. I would want everybody to understand this is something for a lot of people to get to, because if we're going to build tools for people, well, by golly, people from all backgrounds and walks of life need to be in there working and building those tools.
Mm. Well said. Well said. Yes, we need a more variety of backgrounds, right? You don't. I always tell people this. I have my computer science degree, right? I did that, and everything I learned, and none of the things I learned in it have I actually used in the work. And I'm not saying education is bad, and I'm not telling
Oh
people
yeah, yeah, yeah.
go get education, right? Especially if you have employers or opportunities to get it, you should
Hmm.
absolutely get it. There are other aspects of it that help you in maturing yourself. But I would say the technical skills they teach you are pretty dated because tech
Yeah.
changes so fast. So don't let that be the reason why you don't get into some sort of tech career field. So, there's the
Yep.
as you said, Security Plus, and there's a whole bunch of certifications out there. Microsoft gives a ton away for free.
Yep.
Take advantage of the resources and knock it out of the park.
Yeah, and if you're somebody who is a soldier or airman or a sailor, go look at what your education office has to offer you for a lot of these certifications, because you can get a lot of them for free. I've done the vast majority prior to Microsoft making a lot of them free. A lot of my certifications with Microsoft, a lot of my certifications with CompTIA, with Cisco, all those certifications, 100% free, paid for by U.S. government tax dollars. So thank you. And just look at your education office and see what they have to offer you.
Yeah. So Ed, what's next for you? I'm not saying you're going to leave Andworx, but what kind of projects or what kind of interesting things are you trying to tackle? What's coming next for you in the future?
So yeah, I love working at Andworx. We're a great company. We're hiring. So if you're somebody out there who's looking to get into the Power Platform, or you're somebody who is wanting to do more stuff with Power Platform, feel free to reach out. We'd love to have you. But for myself, I would love to in the next couple of years just looking at what I can do to expand our projects right now. The most important, the biggest project that's coming out is Power Pages. So Power Pages is that one tool within the Power Platform that is just kind of just a little out of reach for a lot of stuff. It's not as simple to get into as Canvas apps, or not as simple as to get into as model-driven apps. It's not as intuitive as going into Power Automate. It's not as pretty as getting into Power BI. There's so many various fields, and the model-driven app that controls the entire application. It can be difficult at times to navigate through. So I want to get better at the tool, because I think there's a lot of things that we can do for our federal government that can take advantage of these tools. And with the Power Platform in general, as somebody who has been, a service member, who's been a contractor, who has been a government civilian, I have seen the breadth of things that can happen with the US federal government. So I want to take things that we can do with Power Pages, or that we can do with the entire Power Platform, and push those into those organizations, because I believe we can be better with them. The most, one of the biggest things that the federal government, I think, can take advantage of is the ATO process. Anybody who's not aware of the ATO process, you have to get an authority to operate to touch anything with IT. It doesn't matter if it's a server or software, whatever it is. If you have the Power Platform in your organization, the moment you press publish on that Power App, it is already ATO'd. No extra security has to be involved. No extra anything has to be on that. Now, obviously, you as a good steward of government information are you go out there, make sure you have security roles set up and all that kind of stuff. But there's no extra work that's got to be done with a lot of that, which is one of the biggest costs and biggest time sucks that comes with doing a lot of IT work, is the ATO process. So I believe if we can get more of these tools into the federal government, our government can be better, because we can get things done faster. One of the biggest things I worked many, many years ago was ERP. So Navy ERP was this thing that you had to work with. It dealt with your timesheets, it dealt with billing, all that kind of stuff. We had this organization send us a bill that was to the third decimal point. So it was 25.5. So 3. Navy ERP could only accept something that had 2 decimal points. We spent months and quite a bit of government tax dollars just to get that thing fixed, just because the ERP system wasn't malleable enough to get through that. Because to get that change to that ERP system done would have been hundreds of thousands of tax dollars. ATOs had to update, all these crazy things had to get done. Instead, if it could have been a Power Platform application connected over to an SAP HANA database, we could have been much easier. Not saying Navy ERP is going to be fixed all the days with Power Platform. We'll see, but it could have been done in a much more efficient manner. So yeah, that's my biggest thing. I want the federal government to get more involved with these tools, because I believe we can serve our taxpayers better. I believe we can serve our warfighters better. I believe we serve everybody better by using these tools, just by getting things done faster.
Well, on that note, Ed, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I think those are words for us to live by. We want a more efficient government, so let's get them there.
Thank you, sir.